This is Fox 25 Morning News.
On this Martin Luther King Day, Americans reflect back on the painful legacy of slavery in America. But many Americans don't realize that there are still millions of people enslaved around the world. With us this morning is Francis Bach, who escaped slavery in Sudan, and Tommy Ray Calvert Jr. with the American Anti-Slavery Group. Thank you both very much for being with us this morning.
Happy King Day.
Thank you.
Now, Francis, I think a lot of people are going to be shocked to even hear this, but how many people is it estimated are enslaved around the world?
The estimate of slave today is 27 million people around the world, and that's include 10,000 slaves in my country, I believe, or even more. This is the worst case in my country, and this is the one that I experienced for 10 years, actually from age 17, from year 1986 to 1996. I escaped from it, and that's why it's given me strength today to stand up for those who are still in bondage today, 27 million people.
Now, how old were you when you were essentially kidnapped?
When I was kidnapped, I was 7 years old in 1986.
And your country, Sudan, has been undergoing a bit of a civil war for many years, North versus South. Tell us how you came to be in bondage.
I became, actually one evening my mother asked me to go to local markets, and I would tell a little bit that I really didn't know what's going on in the country at that time because I was a 7-year-old boy. I wasn't aware about the conflict, I wasn't aware about slavery, except the day that I was sent to a marketplace. And soon while I got there, the militia from northern Sudan came and they stormed the market and they started shooting the men and kidnapping the women and children. And was taken was many of the kids and women who been captured in the local markets to the north, which I was met to attend the cattle with a man named Juma Abdullah, who I worked for him for 10 years, forcing me to sleep with the animals and made me to sleep with the animals.
So you didn't get to sleep or live in a normal kind of house, and you had to tend the cattle. When we use the word slavery, is it slavery in the same sense that we think of Africans enslaved doing physical labor in this country, or is it more like indentured servitude, or is there a difference?
I really can't tell you different, particularly a lot, because I actually didn't experience the slavery. But what I would tell you, the experience of slavery, I think is all the same. Slavery is slavery, you know, because when you slave, you don't have freedom, you know. And when I watched the movie about slavery in this country for 3 hours, it surprised me a lot that the slavery all the same. I know it was a couple hundred years ago, but I said, when you slave, you don't have freedom. And that's what happening to my people, and that's what happened to many of whom who are still in bondage today. So it's really connected to what happened in this country, but the difference is a little bit in my country. I heard when the brought slave in this country to bring the men so they can work on the farm and do other things. But in my country, it's a very different case. They actually take the women and children only, you know, and shoot the men because it's a way for them to spread the civilization in southern Sudan because there is conflict and motivation that they want to take over the land.
Tommy, why don't we hear more about this? I mean, this is such an, it's unspeakable.
Well,
maybe that's why we don't speak about it.
Well, most of us are taught that slavery ended in 1865, right, with the Emancipation Proclamation. But today, on Dr. King's Day, January 19th, it's much like June 19th for people in the South. Word of freedom has not reached 27 million people. We all kind of have our blinders on to this issue, but this is the third largest crime in the world, behind the sale of drugs and arms. And Richard Armitage, the Deputy Secretary of State, says that the global slave trade will exceed the trade in illegal arms and narcotics within the next decade. So we have got to do more to fight this crime. And it's happening in many forms. The chattel slavery that Francis experienced is very similar to what African Americans, my ancestors, experienced in this country.
And it takes other forms around the world, in the sex trade, for example.
That's right. Sex slavery, debt bondage in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Nepal. Most of the slavery takes place in South Asia.
A lot of folks are watching thinking, you know, it's horrific, but you know, what can one person do? But a lot of folks can look at their investments for one thing.
Sure. I mean, it's extremely difficult to trace a lot of the companies that use slave labor because this is the most highly underfunded crime in the world in terms of the research, in terms of organizations working to fight this issue. We're underfunded, we're understaffed, and we need people's help. So the first thing I encourage people to do is go to our website, iabolish.com. You can get educated, you can get empowered about what to do. The second thing I would encourage people to do is to join with an abolitionist organization. We have an organization of e-abolitionists who, with 2 clicks of your mouse, you can send a letter to a policymaker, and that has saved lives.
Francis, after all those years of being held against your will, you were able to escape to Egypt and then to the U.S., and they sent you to North Dakota, of all places.
That's true.
What did you think when you looked around and saw the snow, among other things?
I was shocked, actually, because when I came to this country 4 years ago, there was a lot of difficulties to me because I didn't speak the language when I first came here. And I was settled to the city that's the coldest city, I believe, in the U.S. And I was there alone in my own apartment. I don't know where to go and how to survive those conditions. And I used to complain to myself, you know, and I was very happy, you know, on the other hand, because I said, now I'm free.
And you live here in Boston now,
Yes.
and your book is called Escape from Slavery by Francis Bach, if you'd like to pick it up. And also, Francis is going to be speaking today at the Perkins School for the Blind in Watertown at 1:30. Francis Bach and Tommy Ray Calvert Jr., thank you both very much for being with us this morning to tell us your amazing story.
Thank you for having us.
All right, take care.